Hello everyone, this is Dorsa. Me and my groupmates Samuel and Sujita are going to talk about institutions behind family ownership and control in large firms. Enjoy!
Let's start with the introduction. Before starting the introduction, I would like to explain about the family ownership. Family ownership and control simply refers to one family serving as a controlling shareholder of a corporation. Are family ownership and control of large firms beneficial for or detrimental to firm value? So our study is concentrated or related to the question that the role of concentrated family ownership and control in large firms, and we want to identify whether it is good, bad, or irrelevant. The study was conducted on 634 publicly listed family firms in 7 different Asian countries, namely Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, and Thailand. The debate is not about family ownership and control of large firms being absolutely good or bad. Actually, good and bad are just shorthand description of whether or not the benefits outweigh the costs associated with family ownership and control. According to some agency theorists and some family business scholars, large family firms are good, while other agency theorists and other family business researchers argue that large firms that refuse to separate ownership from control would be less efficient than firms with dispersed ownership. In other words, simply it's bad. While the third group of scholars find no value difference between founder-managed and professionally managed firms and family businesses with multiple family members serving as owners do not outperform in market value, implying that family ownership and control are irrelevant for firm value. Therefore, our study is to answer the question that under what conditions are family ownership and control good or bad for the firm value.
So throughout this paper, there's always been mention about agency theory and resource-based theory. So just to simplify what agency theory and what resource-based theory is, I'm just going to explain it. So agency theory describes a relationship between two or more parties in which one party designated as the principal engages another party designated as the agent to perform some task on behalf of the principal. So think of it more of like you have a laptop to yourself, and when you're using your laptop, you'll be very careful about it, right? But let's say like you give your laptop to your friend, who in this case will be your agent, and there's some concern, right, whether that agent will actually use the laptop appropriately, or he will completely smash the keyboard and create a cost for you. So that's where agency cost comes from, and that's where one does not steal his own money comes from. Basically, if I'm using my own laptop, uh, I'll not break, and I'll be more careful about it. On the other hand, resource-based theory suggests that resources that are valuable, rare, difficult to imitate, and no substitutable best position a firm for long-term success. Largest shareholder involved in firm decision making, him or her provides key resources and adopts appropriate strategies to increase firm value. For example, during a financial crisis when an external resources are limited, the largest shareholder and his or her involvement will be a rare resource. Think about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is Tesla's greatest resource because he would provide external resource to make sure that even though he failed two Mars missions, he still made it, to the third one. And so based on both agency and resource-based theory, large family ownership is actually good.
Institution-based views suggest that the relation between family ownership and firm value may vary under different institutional environments in country-specific institutions. The firm value depends on the efficiency of a bundle of internal mechanisms in contributing to the quality of corporate governance. An institutional setting with strong protection of minority shareholders' rights requires less internal mechanisms to formulate because the institutional setting itself is efficient to keep firm value. Weaker the formal, legal, and regulatory institutions protecting shareholders, the more concentrated ownership rights become. From here, we drew our first hypothesis, which was the positive relationship between family ownership and firm value is weaker for firms in countries with more developed legal and regulatory institutions. Family control and firm value. Family firms keep control in the hands of the family primarily through two mechanisms. One is appointing a family member as CEO, and next is as a pyramid structure. Based on the agency theory, We have got the following information like appointing family member as a CEO. They would have the incentives to adopt investment policies to benefit themselves over outside shareholders. CEOs may also be unqualified, incompetent, and undisciplined. Family squabbles may add other complications to make family CEOs ineffective. Also, based on the research-based theory, family ties are not sufficient to achieve competitive advantages. Altruism towards other family members may hurt from wealth maximization. Wide-ranging family connection, a family CEO may have more advantage in accessing resources that otherwise would not be available to the firm. Now I would like to talk about the pyramid structure. Pyramiding means a family owns and control a firm through another firm. How pyramid firms derive benefits from their affiliations is not through costly formal contracting, but through relational contracting, social networks, and family ties. Overall, it seems difficult to tell a priori whether the benefits of family control through family CEO or pyramid structure in large firms outweigh the cost or vice versa. The institutional context of family control. The central problem for large family controlled firms is not the failure of professional managers to serve dispersed shareholders, but rather the expropriation of minority shareholders by controlling shareholders. We are not claiming that all controlling families will expropriate minority shareholders in this case. Indeed, some controlling shareholders may build a reputation for being fair in minority shareholders. More control may afford controlling families more opportunities to expropriate minority shareholders without firm value. More developed legal and regulatory institution makes somehow expropriation of minority shareholders less efficient, thus the resource provision benefits of a family CEO and pyramid structure may outweigh the costs of principal-principal conflicts. Countries with underdeveloped investor protection institutions controlling families usually have a relatively free hand in expropriating minority shareholders. However, institutions may curb the negative effects related with family control. From here, we have drawn like two hypotheses. The hypothesis first says the negative relationship between a family CEO and firm value is weaker for firms in countries with more developed legal and regulatory institutions, while the hypothesis third says the negative relationship between a family pyramid structure and firm value is weaker for firms in countries with more developed legal and regulatory institutions.
In this study, data sources are Asian Corporate Governance Archival Data and WorldScope database. Ownership data are collected for the year 1996 before the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Ownership of each company is traced to its ultimate owner. How much cash flow rights share in percentage of total outstanding shares the owner has is identified. Family firms are recognized as firms having a family as a larger shareholder. A 5% control rights share is used as a cutoff. As you can see, we have three different variables: dependent variable, independent variable, and control variables. For dependent variable, they used firm value, and they measured it by the percentage of cumulative stock return, buy and hold return, from 1st January to 31st December 1998, or the last trading day of the year. A stock market-based measure is used as a firm value indicator. For independent variable, they used family ownership. Family ownership is measured through the fraction of shares owned by the family shareholder with the minimum threshold of 5% ownership rights. Family CEO, a firm with the family members as the CEO is coded as 1 and 0 otherwise. Pyramid structure, a firm with a pyramid structure is coded as 1 and 0 otherwise. Institutional development. They measure institutional variables based on L.A. Porter et al. 1998, whose index has been widely used and validated in recent cross-country studies on shareholder protection and governance. And the last one, control variables, which is debt-to-asset ratio. Firms with a high leverage ratio may experience more difficulties during economic downturns since highly leveraged firms might have more difficulty obtaining external financing during a crisis. Therefore, the debt-to-asset ratio in 1996 is controlled. Firm risk beta. Risky firms generally have a high default risk and are therefore more vulnerable to external shocks. We would expect riskier firms to experience a large drop in firm value. Firm risk is measured by beta computed by regressing a firm's monthly stock return on corresponding country index return in 1996. Accounting transparency (ADR). In general, foreign firms with a listed ADR have higher disclosure quality. Thus, we include an ADR dummy to examine whether increasing accounting transparency leads to better stock price performance during the crisis. We also control for firm age, market-to-book ratio, and capital-to-asset ratio. We included dummy variables for 12 broad industries and country variables. Table 3 shows the effect of family ownership and control on firm value. Based on that, Model 1 does not show a significant impact of family ownership, family CEO, or primary structure, which indicates that family ownership and control may be relevant for firm value. Hypothesis 1 is not supported since the interaction term in Model 2 is not significant. It seems that the institutional impact on the relation between family ownership and firm value is irrelevant. Based on the Model 3 shows a significant impact of family CEO and the interaction of family CEO and institutional development on firm value. Firm CEO has a negative effect, but the interaction term has a positive effect on firm value. Model 4 also shows a significant impact of pyramid structure and the interaction of pyramid structure and institutional development on firm value. Pyramid structure is negatively related with firm value, but the interaction term is positively related with firm value. Overall, we find that the interactions of family control and a country's institutional development have significant impacts on firm value. The negative effect of family CEO and family pyramid structure on firm value is weaker in countries with more developed legal and regulatory institutions. It indicates that whether family control in large firms is good, bad, or irrelevant is systemically correlated with the legal and regulatory institutions governing shareholder protection, thus supporting hypothesis 2 and 3.
So to start with, I'd just like to show an example of pyramiding structure and how complex it is in real life and how they expropriate money. So figure 1 is a real example of a company in Thailand called the ILA Group. Figure 2 has a simplified version of this. Family A owns 51% of company A, which owns 50% of company B, which owns 51% of company C, which owns 50% of company D. The family also owns 1% of company D through a separate wholly owned vehicle, which is company F. So just to simplify it, for example, if an asset sold from company D to F were underpriced by 100 million, then the loss to family through its ownership of D would be 7 million. But its gain through company F would be 100 million, leaving a profit of 93 million, the fruit of expropriation of D's minority shareholder. So at the end of the day, companies D's minority shareholders will be the one paying the price for it. So whereas most continental Europe and Asia is characterized by a greater ownership concentration in hands of individual, families, government or industrial groups, surprisingly ownership structure in Canada differs by huge margin and shows a high level of concentration. And to prove this, I'm showing you two Canadian companies which have less than 50% of share percentage. So if you look at Bombardier, which is 49.78, and Saputo, which is 43%. Canada's institutional framework is well formed as there are two major bodies of CBCA, which is the Canada Business Corporation Act, and OBCA, which is the Ontario Business Corporation Act. They have various legal rules such as restraining order, directing an issue or exchange of securities, order varying or setting aside a transaction or contact. So back to our example of Thailand, if it was in Canada, then the minority shareholder would have been able to put a restraining order stopping the conduct, and the entire situation could be mitigated. To further justify on how strong the protection of minority shareholder interest is in Canada, we compared Canada's index with four other countries, and you can clearly see that Canada is leading in comparison to other countries such as India, Iran, Japan, or even Nepal. Even with the World Bank index, Canada is leading in terms of protection minority investor scores, strength of minority investor protection scores, extent of disclosure index, and extent of director liability index, which makes Canada's legal system very well reformed. In a study conducted in 2013 by Clarkson Center for Board Effectiveness, we found that family-controlled and publicly listed corporations in Canada had generated significantly higher returns to shareholders over a 15-year period than rest of the S&P and TSX index. Additionally, the Rothman School of Management conducted a study on the long-term survival of family business. In their hypothesis 3, they proved that family business in Canada proved lower volatility shareholders compared to other companies. As you can see on the graph, the volatility for family-owned business shareholders were 36%, whereas for other company it were 51%. So to summarize, since Canada has been proved through different metrics to have a developed institution, having family control may outweigh the cost. Just like to leave you all with the thought on how effective the institutional framework is important, because the same Chinese, Thais, Indians, or Africans is doing family-owned business in Canada, and the minority rights are protected here, and no money gets taken away because of the legal structure Canada held to protect minority shareholder. So thank you everyone for paying attention to our presentation, and we look forward to answering your question.